believe it or not, there's more to talk about in the 2023 draft than just quarterbacks for the Indianapolis Colts. There's still some holes all over the roster for this team, and the draft is where they're going to be filled. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here by my colleague, Drake Wally. Drake, we honestly just did a live stream I say 4 hours ago. We were live on the Bleacher Report apps. Shout out to Bleacher Report. It was a fun time. We did a 7-round mock draft. If you guys haven't or weren't able to see it live, go to the Bleacher Report app, download it, look onto the Indianapolis Colts feed, and we should be right there to see the mock draft that Drake and I did on the PFF simulator. But Drake, how you doing, man? 1 week, 7 days, literally 7 days from right now, or exactly a week, 8 o'clock, we will be knowing who the Indianapolis Colts are taking at number 4 overall.
Yeah, and I'm like super excited about it. I cannot wait to finally get all of the questions answered, all of the BS cleared up. The smoke screens will no longer be in season. They will be gone. They will be as clear as rainbows. So I am, yes, absolutely. And also myself and our colleague on Saddle Up, Destin Adams, we're going to be going live for the draft at 7 p.m. and just going to kind of be doing a little bit of a show before then. And then, of course, we're going to be live for the very stressful first selection for the Indianapolis Colts for the future quarterback of the franchise.
Right. Yeah. You guys are going to have to tune in for that. Destin and Drake. Drake lost his camera there, but I'll keep going. Yeah. Destin and Drake are doing a live show the night of the draft. I will be at the draft in Kansas City. That's why Drake and I won't be going live ourselves. So Destin is coming over, combining the two shows to do a live reaction to the draft. I will be there in person covering it all. But you guys will definitely need to check that out. The chat is already going nuts. And we're going to start it out with a super chat from Nathan. Nathan, you gave us a super chat last time. We really appreciate
Nathan
you,
Comanci,
buddy.
thank you so much.
One of our biggest supporters. So well, before we dive into the offensive talk, we'll answer this question. Nathan says, I see Colts going Will Anderson, straight dog. Nathan, I couldn't agree more about Will Anderson. Will Anderson is an absolute beast on the defensive line. I think he's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler. But the Colts aren't going to take Will Anderson. The Colts are going to take a quarterback at number 4. We already know that we have a good sense Bryce Young is going number 1 overall. So it's probably going to come down to the next 3. CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. One of those 3 will be the pick for the Indianapolis Colts at the top. Drake, do you think Will Anderson has a chance, or do you think the Colts are going quarterback?
I think if Matt Ryan would have finished with 25 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions, run heavy offense.
Right.
You make the divisional round, you win the division. Colts are probably like, hey, we could squeeze a couple more good years out of this guy and draft next year potentially. And yeah, we will go ahead and go with a generational edge rusher. That is definitely not the case, though. So they're not going anybody but quarterback. And if they did, the entire city of Indianapolis may be on fire.
I do think Will Anderson will be a hell of a player, though. Like I think you think, Nathan. We really appreciate it, buddy. Always great having you join us for the show. The rest of the chat also is going nuts. Bradley's talking about Josh Downs. Well, we might talk about him later. Truitt, we've got Truitt here. Do we think we might get Stroud? Maybe if he falls down to number 3 or number 4, it's going to be interesting to say the least. We've got Marvin Fox saying that, talking to Logan Schmidt, who I'm going to get to right now, say we make the big money. We've just had a busy day. We've had a busy week for us. But Logan Schmidt, buddy, we really do appreciate all of your support. Can't thank you enough. Thank you for the tip. Drake and I have been grinding, but hey, it's for you guys. We love hanging out with you guys. We love talking Colts football with you guys. Love putting out the great content for a team that we're also heavily invested in. So Logan, we really appreciate you. I know I've said it before. Go check out Logan and Drake's Twitter Spaces Friday nights. just a chill Twitter space talking about the Colts and all things football.
It's a little spicy sometimes.
It gets some spicy, but hey, it's entertaining.
Good.
It's entertaining. One of these days, I promise, guys, I will make an appearance. One of these days, maybe when my wife goes on her girls trip here in a few weeks, we'll see. Of course, we got Stats Matt talking about Drake Spectrum is acting up with his camera there. Everyone's here. We've even got Sarah. Sarah is here 1 week away. So before we dive in, of course, I got to tell you guys to go follow everything. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Go ahead and follow at Colts on FN on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that bell so you know whenever we're going live. Destin and Shot are going live, so that way you know when the live stream for the draft is going live. And guys, if you haven't noticed, go ahead and look up in that top right-hand corner. We've got a newer logo, and you might be asking, what is FFSN? Well, guys, we've made the leap. We are now a podcast that you can actually listen to on the podcast platforms. We are no longer just on YouTube. We have joined the Fans First Sports Network for our podcast needs. We are currently just on Megaphone. We are in the process of getting everything on to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, all of your podcast platforms. We will be there, I would say, within the next week. And as soon as we know that we're live on those platforms, follow us on Twitter. We're gonna let you guys know there. And it's not just gonna be our last episode. We're gonna have everything from the CJ Stroud episode, I think 5 or 6 episodes now away, on the podcast platforms. There's going to be plenty of content there for you guys to enjoy. Stormy, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for the super chat. I know we've got a connection with my co-host here with Stormy. Thank you so much.
That is my mother to anybody that's that's my mom.
There we go.
That is her author. That is her author name. So
yeah. So go check out all the things by Stormy Hellbrook. Really appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's dive into it. Well, we'll ask one more thing. Nathan asks, is there a chance Nick Foles makes the team as a starting quarterback? No. The only reason he's on the team right now is because the Colts I think are probably hoping he retires, so that way they can open up some cap space. But like I said, guys, go ahead and follow us on Megaphone. The link is in the description for the podcast. And when we are on the Apple Podcast, Spotify, all the other platforms, we'll be sure to let you know. So go subscribe, follow, review, all the fun stuff for podcasts. But Drake, I've done enough talking. We're 7 minutes in, haven't even started talking about Colts football. Let's dive in. The Indianapolis Colts have more needs than just a quarterback. And as we've seen over the years, they do look for specific traits in these players in order for them to really be considered a Colt, or for the Colts to place them high up on their draft board. And I'm going to run through these real quick, and then we can kind of talk back and forth a little bit about them. First of all, I think you guys know by how much we've talked about it, athleticism. The Colts love guys that have those high-end athletic traits. We saw it last year in the draft. The Colts drafted all their players, posted a RAS, which is a relative athletic score, of above 9 on a 10-point scale. So they love their athletic guys. They love guys that can really go after size, height, weight, speed, all of those things combined. The Colts love their athletes. The second is team captain. Team captains all across the board for the Colts love that football character. Want to have players that have shown that in the past. They love guys that go to the Senior Bowl. We've seen those older prospects, those more mature prospects. Colts love to see guys that go to the Senior Bowl perform against top competition. And then we've got blue card guys, and I'll explain this a little bit. What the Colts mean by blue card guys? They only give about maybe 5 or 6 of these out in the entire draft class. Blue card guys, or blue chip prospects, are the guys that they cannot pass up. If they fall to them in the draft, they're basically running the card up because they score high on athletic ability, they score high on production, and they score high as far as football character and their fit within the locker room. Colts are very stingy about giving those out. But Drake, did I miss anything, or what do you think about? I know I kind of covered them all, but what do you when you look at the Colts roster, do you really see any guys on the roster that don't have these traits? Because it's really hard to find.
Excuse me. No, actually, and that's why last year was such an interesting year, is because you've seen some of these veteran guys, especially on the offensive line, guys like Smith, Nelson, Kelly. They've shown these exact traits, and no, you absolutely see this. I think one thing. Did you mention Senior Bowl?
I did mention Senior Bowl. Senior
Okay,
Bowl has been
yeah,
huge for them
that's
in the
huge.
past.
Yeah, Chris Ballard will essentially he I'm not saying he'll ignore someone if they don't go to the Senior Bowl, but that really piques his interest. But no, I don't really see anybody right now, and it's nice that Shane Steichen is now here with a breath of fresh air, because that athleticism, the team captain, the blue card guy, whoever these rookies are, it seems like it's finally going to get back to that kind of football, which I'm sure any Indianapolis Colts fan can get pretty excited about.
Right. And I the Colts really, that they're very strict with who they draft. A lot of guys, I mean, I think I know there's 250 some picks in the NFL draft every year. But and this isn't just the Colts, this is a lot of teams. Their draft board really, they only have draftable grades on maybe 120 players in the draft. There's a lot of guys that each team will say for one reason or another, where whether it's character issues, whether it's a medical issue, whether it's they just don't fit the scheme, just all kinds of different things. They'll say, these guys don't fit what we're doing. We're not going to put them on our board. They're not going to be an option for us. And I know last year there was a certain wide receiver that everyone thought the Colts might take at the middle of the second round, and some stuff came out about this wide receiver that was not typically good on the character side. And the Colts took him off their draft board literally a day before the draft. And it really influenced who the Colts did take. And the Colts obviously ended up with Alec Pierce. And I think that's going to prove to be a very good decision. As Stats Matt says, if you're in the chat, Stats Matt put his initials up there. And I think you can kind of see what I mean. But yeah, there's guys that are going to be undraftable that we might not think are undraftable by the Colts standards. So when you're looking at Colts prospects and who the Colts might draft, are they a high level athlete? Were they a team captain? Did they go to the Senior Bowl? All those things need to be considered when you look at these different prospects. But Drake, we're doing offense today. We will be doing defense next Monday. So the biggest issue, I think, for this Colts, outside of quarterback, for this Colts team on the offensive side of the ball, it's got to be the offensive line. The offensive line was a turnstile last year. Yes, it did get better, but there's still need for improvement. So when we're looking at guys, at offensive linemen that the Colts might take, what do you think the Colts are looking for in these offensive linemen, and who they might select probably on day 2 of the draft?
Offensive line is such a difficult position to play, regardless of if it's center, interior, like guard, tackle. You're essentially running into other 300-pound men, keeping them from attacking your 200-plus-pound quarterback. So it's always going to be a learning curve, adjusting from college to the NFL. But I think they're looking for 3 things: athleticism, as you mentioned. They're looking for ability to, maybe if they're looking at a 3-year starter, did he progress each year? They want somebody who's going to continue to get better, and just who has, like you said, that team captain type of mentality, that's willing to say, hey guys, we've allowed 6 sacks. We're starting the 4th quarter. We need to do something, or else we are going to lose this game and allow 10 on the day. They need that kind of voice in the offensive line.
Right. I think another thing that they'll be looking for is a guy that likes to play through the whistle. And what I mean by that is a guy that loves to finish his blocks. This Colts offensive line was pushed around last year, and that's putting it lightly. They did not stand up to the challenge. I mean, when you see Kayvon Thibodeau doing snow angels next to a writhing Nick Foles, and the offensive line just doesn't do anything, I mean, that was terrible. That was just an embarrassing moment for that team. So you want guys with a little bit of an edge. You want guys kind of like how Quentin Nelson, I think Quentin Nelson still has that in him, but Quentin Nelson at the beginning of his career, you saw him just absolutely mowing dudes into the ground, not caring who was on that side, who he was going up against. he was going to basically take your lunch and eat it right in front of you. So with that in mind, Drake, I'm going to let you, we kind of talked about who our guys were before the show, but I'm going to let you give yours first. So we're going to name an early round pick that we would choose that would fit with the Colts, a mid round pick, and a late round pick. So Drake, who is your early round selection that you think would be really good for the Indianapolis Colts?
I know that a lot of people, in fact, I see Colts House on the most recent chat said Torrance Nelson combo could make a good combo, especially if they draft Anthony Richardson. That's somebody who might be able to help Richardson, knows him from college.
Mm-hmm.
I do not go Torrance though because of the worries with his shaky blocking consistency. I want to go TCU's Steve Avila. That's the
Mm-hmm.
guy I want to take in the early rounds. That's a guy that you can plug and play right there at right guard. Look, at the end of the day, I think that they like Will Fries. They want Will Fries, but you cannot have Pinter Pryor 2.0. That's a fast track to a 4-12-1 season, as you saw. So you don't want to do that again. Push Will Fries. You pretty much got Raymond. He's good. Push Will Fries. Either he's going to get supplanted or you're going to find out that this dude is the real deal.
Right. You nailed it right on the head. While Will Fries did show some promise, you can't go into the next season with betting that Will Fries is either going to take that next step or you're going to be fine with Will Fries. That's exactly the situation that the Colts got their offensive line in last year, and it didn't go well. Stats Matt, I'm going to go with your boy Cody Mock, the toothless red-headed version of Quentin Nelson, as
Love
Stats
that
Matt
guy.
says.
Love
I
Cody.
If you've seen my mock drafts all off season or all leading up to the draft, Cody Mock has been in every single one of them. A guy that played left tackle at North Dakota State, but he fits better at guard in the NFL. I think he's about 6'5", 300 pounds. He's going to need to probably put on a little bit of weight, but man, the kid plays with a tenacity that rivals that of Quentin Nelson. I think he's going to there's going to be a learning curve for him to switch inside to guard, but man, Cody Mock would probably be one of the guys. If he's available there at 35, the Colts would really be hard pressed to move back into the second round or trade back in the second round. I think they would really like Cody Mock on that team. And I know the Colts for a fact are very interested and have a very high grade on Cody Mock as well.
Cody Mock seems like the kind of guy up there in North Dakota that chooses to live in the mountains in a log cabin and catches his like meals and actually eats it raw. I mean,
You're not wrong. You're not
the
wrong.
dude literally looks like an offensive lineman. He plays to the whistle. He is tenacious. That is everything that checks every box that you want. If you're looking at pushing, a guy like Will Fries, a guy like Cody Mock would be perfect. Love the fact that you put him there.
Right. Colts House says that, I hate to say it, boys, but cornerback might be a bigger need by losing Gilmore, and it very well could. You could see there's a lot of good cornerbacks. We'll talk about those on Monday that the Colts I know really like in this draft, and I know the Colts haven't made a move yet at cornerback, so while you have a semi-starter level talent in Will Fries, you really don't have a starter at cornerback. So I think it is going to be between those two. You're either going to get a cornerback in the second round or you're going to get an interior offensive lineman. But Drake, go ahead and give us your mid-round offensive line pick that you think would be a really good fit with the Colts.
Well, it's very simple. I'm going with logic here. It's a guy that the Colts have shown some interest in, and that's OSU's DeWanda Jones. I think that they're pretty high on him. Again, if the Colts, at least under Chris Ballard, if they are scouting an offensive lineman, you can just bet that they are versatile and athletic. We kind of already covered this. Same thing with DeWanda Jones. They feel like he can probably play multiple positions. And people, might with the untrained eye might say tackle to guard. How big of a difference is that? It's a world of difference. You're talking about pull blocks as opposed to just simple backstep blocks. So I think that a guy like DeWanda Jones fits the mold. Plus, like I said, they've just been all over him. They've been like scouting the crap out of him. So
They really have. DeWan Jones, I don't know if he's going to be available in the mid rounds. I think if the Colts are going to take DeWan Jones, it's probably going to have to be in the second round. And it'd be interesting because DeWan Jones is 6'8", over 350 pounds. He doesn't really have the body for a guard. He's got an incredibly long wingspan. You typically want that guy to be a right tackle. So in that case, you might see Braden Smith, who played right guard at Auburn for his college career. The Colts drafted him to be a right guard. He just happened to turn into one of the better right tackles in the NFL. Do the Colts switch Braden Smith inside to right guard if they do select DeJuan Jones? I think that's a very big possibility. Then you kind of shore up right guard with Braden Smith. You get that absolute behemoth of a human being in DeJuan Jones there on the outside as a bookend with Bernard Raymond on the other side. Could be interesting. But my mid round pick is another guy that played tackle, would probably switch inside to guard. Nick Saldiveri out of Old Dominion. He's a small school guy, hell of an athlete. Athletic testing off the charts, but he's got great footwork. Really just kind of needs to work with his consistency, put it all together. Do I think he starts at right guard from day one? Probably not. But I do think that you could see middle of that rookie season, towards the end of the year, once Nick Saldiveri kind of gets used to the NFL game, he could be the future starter there at right guard. And then for the late round pick, I'm going to go with a guy that I coming across doing the indie draft guide. I came across this guy late, but I really love his tape, and that's John Gaines the second. John Gaines the second, a guard at UCLA. Again, high level athlete, very long. You again, and another guy that just needs to be more consistent with his footwork. He's not a guy that's going to start from day one, might not even start that first year. But once you get him into an NFL program, he's a guy that has shown to take coaching really well. I think he could be a really solid starter at right guard if you're looking to bet on his upside on day 3.
Yeah. Yep. And one of the things that kind of plays into the guy that I've got for the late pick is it's a totally different story, as I think that he was probably going to be more of your like maybe even a late date, like a late second round pick potentially or something like that. And then he had a combine injury, and that's Andrew Voorhees. I really do think that this is a guy that you're going to have to just accept and say, look, he's probably long term. Obviously, he's probably going to sit out that rookie year. But man, all of the tape, all of the intangibles, all of the everything else screams that this guy's a starter. So I think if he's just sitting there in the late rounds and you're the Colts, you'd be really hard pressed not to just be like, you know what? Regardless of if we can use him or not, we should just take him, because the guy had such a high upside. Then he got hurt. So he's going to fall to those later rounds. Might be a bargain pick. And we call him Bargain Ballard.
I mean, you're not wrong there. Andrew Voorhees, I like his tape. I really do. I think he's a solid starter, and I think that he could be someone uh, that eventually starts at right guard down the road. It's really going to be all about the medicals with Andrew Voorhees and how far he does slip in the draft. If he slips to mid to late day 3, I think he's absolutely would be a target for the Indianapolis Colts. We've got Sky back in here. We really appreciate you, buddy. Always coming and showing support. Sky says we need an explosive wide receiver for that offense. Jalen Hyatt. Well, Sky, we're actually going to move it along to the wide receivers right now, and Jalen Hyatt, we have talked about him. He'd be an interesting case there in slot. He definitely has the speed to get it done, but does he fit what the Colts typically look for in their wide receivers? So let's talk about that now. Sky, we really appreciate the support, buddy, always on our shows on week in and week out. Really appreciate it. And Stats Matt says, Andrew, you might know this. Why did John Michael Schmidt's name fall off a cliff? I don't think it has around the league. I think John Michael Schmitz is still considered probably the number 1 or number 2 center. I think as for the Colts community, because John Michael Schmitz has really only played center. That's why, again, you're talking about kind of the Danny Pinter situation. Since the Colts are keeping Ryan Kelly, the need to get a pure center isn't nearly as high. Now, if you were looking for a starter at center, then yes, John Michael Schmitz, I think, would be that guy, because he is ready to start from day 1. but you're not going to take him, try to make him go to guard when all of his natural ability is shown he can play center really well. So I think that's why his name hasn't been mentioned as much with the wide receiver, with the offensive line. But Drake, let's talk about wide receivers. When we're looking at wide receivers for the Indianapolis Colts, what do the Colts always draft? Guys that are over 6 foot, 200 pounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I think it's Steve Keown. Not sure what we typically look for in wide receivers is really working out and us getting explosive top notch guys. Excuse me. So I actually think that perhaps by bringing in 5'9" Isaiah McKenzie, maybe Ballard with his seat very hot is willing to maybe go outside of his typical requirements for a guy like that. Because if you're talking about in space, you want a guy who's a little smaller. But anyway, I think that if we're talking early, if we're talking really early, Jalen Hyatt obviously is a huge addition, but I think you're talking more John Mingo from Ole Miss. That'd be my pick. I know who Andrews is. That's why I avoided it, because that's actually mine too. But anyway, John Mingo is a big physical. He's like 6'2", 220 pounds. He could play that big slot receiver, give guys nightmares. He's bigger and more physical than Paris Campbell and can probably block better too. You'd get that Zach Pascal back that they missed with those long runs. So for me, I think that Chris Ballard's mouth is watering when he sees a guy like John Mingo.
Jonathan Mingo is the prototypical Chris Ballard wide receiver, over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, still pretty quick, runs a 4.46 40, I think. Primarily plays in the slot, really good blocker, really someone that isn't afraid to go and block, which the Colts I think desperately needed after the loss of Zach Pascal. Jonathan Mingo, if there's a chance he goes in the second round, if he's there in the third round, I think the Colts would take him in the third round. He is just an absolute stud, and I know the Colts have a good grade on Jonathan Mingo. But yeah, typically when you're looking at Colts wide receivers that they draft, over 6 foot, over 200 pounds. Usually they have that vertical speed in them, like to go get jump balls, long, have a big catch radius. They might struggle with some drops at times, but the Colts have typically looked past that. But the guy that, as stats, Matt, him and I have been just on the same wavelength tonight. I think Tyler Scott is a huge name to watch, and that's who I'm picking as my early round, because I don't think Tyler Scott makes it out of the second round. Wide receiver out of Cincinnati, again, a little bit smaller. He's under 6 foot, under 200 pounds. But as you mentioned, Drake, there seems to be a little bit of a shift, and I think that has to do with Shane Steichen. I think Shane Steichen coming
Absolutely.
in here, I don't think there's necessary. Frank Reich might have been the same way of saying like, "Hey, I want bigger wide receivers all around, so that way they can switch in and out." Seems like Shane Steichen doesn't have that those requirements. I mean, the Colts brought in Isaiah McKenzie, who is he even said it on he's maybe listed at 5'9". He said it when we interviewed him that he's actually 5'7", under 200 pounds, but lightning quick. Colts could look for somebody like that for Tyler Scott, an absolute burner, who I know the Colts have done extensive work with. He even admitted it in an interview on The Athletic as well. Tyler Scott very well could be the pick. That's who we picked in our Bleacher Report mock draft in the third round. Tyler Scott is definitely a name to watch for the Indianapolis Colts if he can make it to the third round.
Well, and very brief, think about the best friend for a rookie quarterback. It's a guy that you can get that ball out quick and in space to. Calvin
Right.
Johnson didn't catch little hitch routes and then get in space, okay? He had crisp route running and deep ball ability and 50-50 ball ability and just outmuscled everybody with everything else. The guy was big receivers. You don't want them like to be the quick little out in space guy. You want the little scat back type looking guys. And that's exactly what Isaiah McKenzie is. Now, obviously, Scott is a little bigger, but I think he fits that mold perfectly. And I think that you mentioned it in the mock draft earlier that he could push Isaiah McKenzie for that wide receiver 3 spot.
Right. And then I'm gonna give my mid-round pick here. It's a guy that might not be on too many people's boards necessarily, but I think I'm going to go with Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma. Again, another small guy. For some reason, I just have this feeling that if the Colts take a wide receiver, if it's not Jonathan Mingo, it's going to be one of these smaller guys. A lot of slot receivers in this class, which luckily that's what the Colts need. And they might not necessarily be top end first round wide receivers, but you could find a nice slot receiver in those middle rounds. Marvin Mims, another guy with great speed. He is not that big. I think he is only like 5'10, 5'11, 183 pounds, but I know he ran a 4.38 40-yard dash, just absolutely blazing speed. Put that guy in the middle. You can stretch that defense. You have a guy in the slot to clear things out. I think Marvin Mims in the third round would also be great value. Wyatt Law agrees with me. Good to see you, buddy. Mims is electric.
Well, and the thing about before I get to my pick, Marvin Mims, I've got it here. He's 5'11", but he's 177 pounds. So that is very lean, quick, Deontay Smith type of body, or excuse me,
Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith type of body, where you're kind of like, well, is that going to work out well? Well, clearly, if he knows he's light and he knows he's very quick on his feet. So for me, it's A.T. Perry from Wake Forest, because I am going the Ballard way. I want the big, nasty, fast, physical dude. And this is a guy who's pretty much Jonathan Mingo, but he's falling in later rounds. So it's one of those things where you want that blocking. Because again, Jack Doyle and Zach Pascal, yes, the O-line in 21 was fantastic, but the guys that really punched those deep runs for Taylor were guys like Pascal and guys like Doyle, who would make those second and third level blocks. A.T. Perry, you won't have any shortage of blocking. So I think if you're looking at the Colts right now, yes, you picked up McKenzie. He's not a blocker, though. You need a big bodied blocker.
Right. A.T. Perry, I think, would be the classical mid-round wide receiver pick for Chris Ballard in the Indianapolis Colts. Drake, who's your late round selection if the Colts are looking for a wide receiver on day 3?
Oh man, so this is a guy that I fell in love with at the combine.
Yes, he did. Drake.
Yeah.
I know who he's talking about. Drake just was salivating at this guy's potential in a Shane Steichen offense.
So he comes from Princeton University, and his name is Andre Iosavas, and this dude is lightning quick. Guy's like 6'5". He can block. He had an absolutely immaculate, smooth catching radius. The guy is going to fall in the late rounds. And I'm telling you, if he's sitting there in round 5 with those 3 picks they've got, they don't have 1 in 6. But if he's sitting there in 7, which I think they have 2, my God, you got to pick up Iosavas. You're going to love him because he can do pretty much everything. Might be more raw than usual because Princeton doesn't have an immaculate offense. But man, Shane Steichen could probably help mold the guy for sure.
Stats Matt saying to take Jalen Wayne and pair him with his uncle or his second
Very
cousin
fair.
Reggie Wayne as a pairing for the Indianapolis Colts. Now Drake Iosavas, you might have it. He's pretty big, 6'3", 205 pounds, runs a 4.4 40. But my guy is a little bit bigger and a little bit faster. Bryce Ford Wheaton out of West Virginia. He's 6'4", 221 pounds, and runs a 4.38 40. He reminds me of Mike Strawn or Desmond Patman, Doris Fountain. Big wide receivers with a huge catch radius, have plenty of speed to get down the field as a deep threat. Just a very raw. But again, when you're talking about Chris Ballard, and we're not speaking of which, we're not going to talk about with the next pick because it came out at 7. So neither Drake or I have seen it yet. We'll talk about it next week. But Chris Ballard says bet on those high end traits. So when you get someone that's kind of like that Mike Strawn that they've been trying to build, Bryce Ford Wheaton, I think has tremendous upside there at the end of the draft. And I think you could probably look for him 6th, 7th round. Colts could probably take a shot on Bryce Ford Wheaton. But we're going to wrap up the offensive side of the ball here, talking about the running backs and the tight end positions. Now, the Colts running back room, pretty solid, I would say, with Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, Deion Jackson. Tight end room, same. Jelani Woods, Kylan Granson, Mo Alley Cox, Drew Ogletree. There's not too much of a need here, but I mean, you can find some. It's a very stacked tight end class, and you can find some very good running backs either late on day 3 or as undrafted rookie free agents. Drake, when you're looking at both of these positions, at the running back position and the tight end position, what traits do you see the Colts usually going after when drafting or picking up players for these two positions?
Shiftiness is number one because if you look at any one of these guys right now on the roster, I mean, Zach Moss is probably
For
the
running
least.
back?
Yeah, for running back, he's the least amount of it, but even he's able to create space in traffic. Taylor is. I've always said it, and I'll continue to say this. My friend Dylan Gonderman actually coined this. The great thing about JT is he's lightning in a bottle. Okay, and then you've got Deion Jackson, who can also be that way. Very shifty guy. I think they look for very quick movement, but in this case, I think they're looking for a Naeem Hines clone almost, a guy that's very small, a guy that's very compact, and more of the kind of pass down type of guy. For me, it's Deuce Vaughn from Kansas State. He's only 5'5", which is astonishingly tiny. But man, that could really cause some problems with a guy like Steichen, who knew how to use Boston Scott, Miles Sanders, and Kenneth Gainwell in Philly. Can't tell me he couldn't figure out a scat back like Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy that seems like a Darren Sproles size,
Love it.
maybe a Naheem Hines, like you said. I saw Deuce Vaughn in person when I was at the Big 12 championship game. Kid can move. Kid can move. He's a guy that while he is small, it's almost like he hides behind those offensive linemen. You don't really know where he is until he's gone almost. So it's a very interesting pick. Stats Matt says Tajee Spears. I think Tajee Spears is going to be a maybe third, fourth round pick. And that's the only reason why I say he's probably not the best fit for the Colts, simply because he's going to go way before the Colts are even considering a running back. For me, I'm going with a guy that, I mean, we talked about how Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, guys that they can cover running the ball. But the biggest thing that's missed with Naheem Hines going to Buffalo, his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and be a receiving back. And for me, that's Evan Hall out of Northwestern. The kid over the past 2 seasons caught 94 catches, or 94 balls, excuse me, at Northwestern in an offense that really isn't known for throwing the ball. He's probably the best or the most natural pass catching back in this class. The only problem is he does need considerable work on his pass protection. That's something that desperately needs work. So will the Colts keep him on the practice squad, or is he going to be a guy that wins that third down running back role, while also earning his keep on special teams? I could see that. But Evan Hall, big fan. He's who I put in my all drafts team. I think that's somebody we could see as an option at running back, either late in the draft or as an undrafted free agent for the Colts. Now moving along to the tight end, I think the trait that stands out the most, very tall room. It seems like every single one of them outside of Kylan Granson is 6'5" or above. Kylan Granson at 6'2" is the tiny one, if you even can call him that, of the bunch, considering neither one of Drake or I are taller than 6 foot. But I digress. I saw Truitt ask this. So are we keeping Mo Alley Cox with the rumors? So far, I mean, I think that there is a chance Mo Alley Cox could be dealt. But with such a strong tight end class that's coming up in this draft, there is no market for tight ends right now. So it would probably have to be till after the draft. Maybe a team doesn't hit on one of its tight end picks, or isn't able to get the guy that they want at the tight end position. Then you might see a little bit of a market for Mo Alley Cox. But as of right now, there really isn't one. So Drake, we know the Colts love tight ends that are huge, have a huge catch radius, can run the seam. But I think the biggest need would be a blocking tight end. What do you think?
You know, it's interesting because I think that they may have shored that up with Pharaoh Brown. I think that Pharaoh
Mhm.
Brown is a career blocking tight end, basically. I think over like 5 years, the dude has like 45 catches or something. Phenomenal blocker, though. And Andrew Ogletree, in his own right, is a phenomenal blocker, especially in the run game. I think that Jelani Woods is going to start getting more developed in his blocking, too. So for me, I actually think that they're going to go Marshawn Ford from Louisville. Now, this is
Okay.
another guy that's like Kylan Granson. He's 6'2". He's a burner. I just think that with guys like Brown, I mean, you got Brown, you got Ogletree, you've got Woods. Those are some trees. Then you've got Granson, and I think you want to push him because there's been big question marks about Kylan Granson. So I think best way to do that is to push the guy, get another guy that's like him, that's hungry enough to potentially take a starting spot, and you might get the best out of him in that case.
Right. I think if the Colts are going to take a tight end, and Stats Matt again reading my mind as he says, can't say it, cannot root for the Colts to draft a Purdue player, but I'm thinking that might be who it is, Payne Durham, or as we like to say, Jack Doyle 2.0, and the
2.0.
guy that has a very good relationship with Jack Doyle. He models his game after the former Pro Bowl Colts tight end. He's not a guy that's going to burn you down the field. He might not be the most athletic guy out there, but all he does is he sticks his nose in there, blocks well, and opens holes up for his running backs. He's got solid hands over the middle, and on a 3rd and 7, he's going to get you 8 yards. So Payne Durham, Jack Doyle 2.0 could be very well be what this Colts team needs if they do decide to select a tight end. I think it's going to be someone like that. I see names as Colts House saying Tucker Kraft or Zach Kuntz. I've seen Michael Mayer. I've seen Dalton Kincaid, Darnell Washington. Listen, guys, all of those a lot of those tight ends are gonna go in the 2nd and 3rd, 4th rounds.
Mayer's a first rounder.
Mayer is a first rounder, as well as Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah.
Luke Musgrave is another one of those. The Colts are just, I don't think the Colts are going to take a tight end that high in the draft, especially after putting so much draft capital into the tight end position last year. They've got a lot of young, good players. They need someone that could be a blocking inline tight end, and probably they're going to they would take one later in the draft because you can't fill everything with the limited amount of picks up at at the top of the draft. Logan Schmidt says Michael Mayer at 4. As a Notre Dame fan, hey, that'd be pretty cool, but I want a quarterback at 4 personally. So those are the offensive skill or positions that outside of quarterback that the Colts will be looking at in the draft. Let us know in the comments below if you like our fits that we chose. If you have other fits that you think are better, definitely leave a comment and let us know. So Drake, let's move it along to the latest Colts news and rumors. The Colts did have some media availabilities yesterday, but the one that stood out to I think everybody was we heard from Shaquille Leonard, and we got an update on how his back is doing. He said that it's progressing well, that he feels better than he did all of last season. Still not ready to say he's back to 100%, but he says he feels more strength in that calf. He feels more explosive in that calf, and he says he feels like everything is firing again, which I think is great news. I know there's still some people. I was talking to Wyatt Law on Twitter today that he's not so sure. He's still a little skeptical until he actually sees Shaq Leonard back out on the field. Drake, what do you think about Shaq Leonard's injury? And were you encouraged yesterday by the comments, not only from him, but from Gus Bradley, Sire Franklin, and some others that spoke to an injury that Shaq's been dealing with for over a year now?
Well, when you're talking about the back, when you're talking about nerves, it's really delicate. So it can affect far more than just one area of the body. So I felt very, very reassured from Shaq Leonard. Also, just a default thing about the guy is he is an absolute warrior. He really shouldn't have even been out there last year, but he still was out there pretty much dealing with 25% health and still playing downs on a very bad NFL football team. So I think that this is a guy that's hungry. I do like Logan's comment about Shaq as defensive player of the year 2023. If there's one guy that I don't know about his body, I don't know if it's ready to hit that yet, but his mind is, and it's already there. And I'm telling you, if there's one guy who would push himself to get to that point, it's Shaq Leonard of the Colts.
Stats Matt says here, I think he's a tad closer than he let on, but didn't want to raise expectations. And I mean, when you watch Shaquille Leonard go up to the podium, he's always honest with the media. I mean, he doesn't care who's in the room. He's going to give you an honest answer. I mean, that's why he calls people out on Twitter. That's just Shaquille Leonard. He was very honest about how hard last year was mentally, physically. He said he was embarrassed sometimes that couldn't get out there and fight with his brothers. He said it was one of the hardest years of his entire life. And I think what he's doing, and I really like that comment by Stats Matt, because he said yesterday that he was the while people were saying that he was selfish by sitting out, he said the thing that he was selfish about was trying to come back too early. And then when he was on the field, he was hurting his team. And we talked about it at the time. When you saw him out there, he was slow. He wasn't able to be the Shaq Leonard that we've all come to know and love over the past 5 seasons. So when you're talking about a guy whose game is predicated on being explosive, being able to react, being able to use his speed and his instincts, when you can't do that, I mean, it takes a lot out of you. No, he is not considering retirement. Absolutely not. Kevin Bowen asked that yesterday, and Shaq said no before he could even finish the question. So that is not on the table. But I think we need to keep this in mind that I think he saw what coming back too early could do last year, and he wants to take the appropriate steps. And again, we said this last year, it's only April. He has plenty of time to get healed. I'm not going to panic yet. If it gets to August and he's still not close to returning, then I think you guys can hit the panic button. But it seems very encouraging. It seems like now what it's about is just building up that strength in the calf, in the ankle, making sure everything continues to fire as it should. And then once they're comfortable with it, then they can ramp up the activity, ramp it, and make sure that he can handle the workload that he could. But just reading his body language, reading Gus Bradley, Zaire Franklin's body language about how they've talked with him and been around him, Shaq Leonard feels like he's in a different place. And I don't think he would be mentally, and I don't think he would be showing it so much outwardly if he was still afraid of not being able to come back. I think he feels right now that the issue has been resolved, and it's just now working his way back till he's able to get back on the field.
Absolutely. And to make it very brief, this is a guy who is one of the most undersized linebackers in the NFL. The guy is like 6'3", like 235 pounds. He is very light, very off his feet, likes to move quickly. So having nerve issues had to have absolutely frustrated the guy. And I actually like, there was a comment earlier that mentioned that he's the top defensive player in the entire NFL when healthy. It's really hard to upend Aaron Donald, I will say. But look, at the end of the day, if you're talking linebackers, this isn't even biased. This is a man who plays like 2 or 3 linebackers in one human being when he's feeling 80% on any given day. If he feels like 100%, you are looking at any given year defensive player of the year. Mark my words. If he's 100%, that's an entirely different defense from start to finish.
I'll say this: we will all be happy to see Shaq Leonard back, rocking that number 53, fully healthy on this Colts defense. Because when he's out there making plays, football is just a lot more fun to watch for all of us. But that's our show for this evening, guys. Really appreciate it. We had a lot of fun talking about prospects that weren't quarterbacks. We've been talking quarterbacks for weeks. It was fun to dive
Didn't even
into
know
some
who I
of the
was.
others. I know it exactly. It was fun not talking quarterbacks for once, which we'll certainly be talking about them 1 week from tonight. But shout out to Colts House, Sarah, Logan for the massive super chat, Wyatt Law, Nico, Gardaki's Playground. Hopefully I said that right. Sky Stats Matt, Frank Cook. I think I said Wyatt Law already. I saw Marvin Fox, Nathan for the super chat, Stormy for the super chat. You guys absolutely killed it. Truett, always for your support. We love you guys. We really do. Please go ahead and follow us on all the things. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Go ahead and follow at Colts on FN on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, whenever Destin and Shot are going live. 1 week, guys, till the first round of the NFL draft begins. And like I said, link is in the description to go follow us on Megaphone if you want to hear the podcast on there. We will let you guys know as soon as we are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, all the things. We're just waiting on that to get approved through those channels. But Drake, go follow Drake. First of all, at DWalsterDrake. Again, he's been writing like crazy. What are some things on horseshoehuddle.com that the people should go check out?
So the two pieces that I think that are the most recent one is that Peter Schrager's comment on Will Levis. That could actually hold some weight. And then I actually did I did a prediction piece on what each quarterback from 1 to 5, from Young all the way to Hendon Hooker, how they would fare starting every single game, 17 games for the current Colts roster. I did a prediction piece, and want to hear everybody's thoughts on that one for sure.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I really like that, seeing where and
I
your
felt like it was
reasoning
accurate.
behind the different different records you gave each quarterback. So like I said, I released my all fits team. So every position on the roster, I put a guy from the 2023 draft class that I think best fits the Indianapolis Colts. And then I released a story on Shaquille Leonard and everything that he's been thinking behind the scenes, and what he hopes to accomplish when he's back on the field. So definitely go check that out. And guys, I won't get to talk to you until Monday, but I'm dropping my final mock draft on Monday with who I think the Colts are going to draft, if I think the trades are going to be made. All of that will be in that mock draft that drops Monday morning. So be sure to check that out. Like I said, go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Monday night to talk about the defensive side of the ball and defensive prospects that we think best fit and who could be Indianapolis Colts after next weekend is in the books. But until then, enjoy your weekend. And guys, the draft is only a week away. We'll see you soon.